Hello there, welcome to HFY Quantum Pro. Here, helping one another makes the universe smarter. So, what we are waiting for? Let's begin our story.
The briefing room smelled like rust and old metal, the way every Finn outpost smelled because the Finn never spent money on things that did not make money. Grillo sat in a crooked chair across from a flickering screen where Supervisor Olu's gray face stared at him with the same expression it always wore, disappointment mixed with greed. There is a human station on the edge of Council space, Olu said. They call it Haven. Every cycle around their star, the humans on this station do something remarkably stupid. Grillo leaned forward. Stupid meant profitable. They pool their resources, Olu continued. Food, gifts, decorations. They gather everything into storage bays, and then they give it all away to each other. For free. They call it Christmas. Grillo blinked all three of his eyes one at a time, which was the Finn version of disbelief. They just give things away. Yes, to every person on the station, even aliens who happen to be present. They spend weeks preparing. The storage bays will be full. Security will be minimal because the humans apparently trust each other during this period. Olu leaned closer to the screen. You will go to Haven Station. You will take everything in those bays. You will bring it to me, and I will sell it. Simple work. Even you should manage it. Grillo did not appreciate the insult, but he appreciated the job. Easy theft from a species too sentimental to guard their own supplies. He had done worse for less. He took the dust runner out of dock that same day and made the jump to Haven Station sector. The trip took 4 days. He spent them reviewing station layouts, access codes he had purchased from a contact, and cargo capacity calculations. Everything fit. He would be in and out in one night. When the dust runner dropped out of faster-than-light travel and Haven Station appeared on his view screen, Grillo's first thought was that something had gone wrong with his sensors. The station was covered in lights. Not emergency lights. Not navigation lights. Colored lights. Red, green, white, gold. They wrapped around the exterior docking arms, lined the viewport frames, and blinked in patterns that served absolutely no functional purpose. He docked under a fake trader registration and stepped through the airlock into the station. The assault on his senses was immediate. Music was playing from speakers mounted on the corridor walls, humans singing about snow and bells and something called a reindeer. The walls were covered in green plants with red berries. Paper shapes of stars and trees hung from the ceiling on strings. The air smelled sweet like baked sugar. Grillo had visited dozens of stations across the galaxy. He had been to war zones that felt less chaotic than this. A human male walked past him carrying a stack of boxes wrapped in shiny paper and ribbon. The man nodded at Grillo and said, "Happy holidays," as if they knew each other. They did not know each other. Grillo stared after him. He made his way through the corridors toward the cargo level, keeping his head down and his 3 eyes scanning everything. The station was mid-sized, home to maybe 3,000 humans and a few hundred aliens of various species. Every single human he passed was smiling. Some were laughing. A group of them were decorating a massive green tree in the main atrium, hanging small shiny objects on its branches while arguing cheerfully about where each object should go. Grillo found the storage bays on Deck 7. There were 4 of them, and his contact's information was correct. They were packed. Crates of preserved food, fresh ingredients, bottles of drink, boxes of wrapped gifts, rolls of decorative material, bundles of lights. One bay was entirely full of presents labeled with names. Another held enough food to feed the station for a week. And the security was exactly as Olu had described. A simple lock code on each door. No guards. No cameras pointed at the bays specifically. The humans had apparently decided that no one would steal from them during Christmas. Grillo almost laughed. Almost. He spent the next few hours walking the station, memorizing patrol routes, timing shift changes, and identifying the best path from the storage bays to his docking port. He found a maintenance shaft that would let him move cargo without being seen in the main corridors. Everything was falling into place. He was calculating load times in his head when something tugged at his sleeve. He looked down. A small human was standing there. Very small. It had curly brown hair and a gap between its front teeth, and it was wearing a red sweater that was far too big for it. It was looking up at him with wide brown eyes and absolutely no fear. "Hi," the small human said. "I am Nora. What is your name?" Grillo pulled his sleeve free. "I am busy." "That is a weird name," Nora said. "Are you here for Christmas? Do you want to see the tree?" My dad helped put the star on top, but he had to stand on Rennie's shoulders, and Rennie is really tall, so it was funny. Grillo turned and walked away. The small human did not follow, but he could feel her watching him as he rounded the corner. He returned to the dust runner and sat in the cockpit, reviewing his plan one final time. For storage bays. One modified cargo drone for silent transport. Christmas Eve, 2 days from now, when every human on the station would be gathered in the main hall, singing and eating and being foolish together. He would take everything, every gift, every meal, every pointless decoration. He would be gone before their songs ended. It was, without question, the easiest job he had ever been given. 2 days before Christmas Eve, Grillo learned that humans were even stranger than he had been told. He spent the morning watching them from a corner table in the station's food hall, nursing a cup of bitter liquid the vendor had called coffee. It tasted like engine coolant mixed with regret. But the seat gave him a clear view of the hall, and what he saw there made his gray skin crawl. A woman was handing out plates of food to anyone who sat down. Not selling, handing out. She had been cooking since before the station lights shifted to daytime mode, and she was giving every plate away with a smile so wide it looked painful. An old man next to her was pouring drinks and telling the same terrible joke to everyone who approached. People laughed anyway, every single time. Grillo watched a human engineer named Dahl. He had learned the name from station chatter, spent his entire off shift building a small mechanical bird out of scrap parts. The bird flapped its wings when you wound a key on its back. It was clever work. When Dahl finished it, he wrapped it in colored paper and wrote a child's name on it. Not his own child's name, someone else's child. He had spent 9 hours building a toy for a stranger's kid, and he looked happy about it. This was a species that had conquered faster than light travel. They had tamed their death world, spread across the stars, and built stations in the emptiness of space. And they were spending their time making toy birds and baking free food. Grillo left the food hall and nearly tripped over Rennie. The Palak was enormous, easily 3 times Grillo's height, covered in thick brown fur, with a flat face and small round eyes. He was wearing a red hat with a white ball on the end of it. "You are the new trader, yes?" Rennie said in a voice that rumbled like a cargo shuttle. "Welcome to Haven." "Cookie." He held out a tray. On it were small baked shapes covered in colored sugar, stars, trees, circles. "No," Grillo said. "Your loss," Rennie said, eating 3 at once. "The humans make these every year. They are wonderful. Everything about this time is wonderful." "You are a Palak," Grillo said. "This is not your celebration." "No, but the humans do not care about that. They include everyone. I have been here 6 years, and every December they treat me like family. Last year, they knitted me a sweater. Do you know how much yarn it takes to make a sweater for a Palak?" Rennie spread his massive arms. "A lot. They did it anyway." Grillo stared at him. "And what do they get in return?" Rennie thought about this. "They get to see me with a sweater. It makes them happy." He paused. "I know this does not make sense to a Finn, but I will tell you something strange. Every year after Christmas, this station runs better. People work harder. They fight less. They help each other more. It lasts for months. The humans spend a week being foolish together, and somehow it makes everything work. That is not how economics functions," Grillo said. "Maybe not, but it is how humans function." Rennie wandered off with his cookies and his ridiculous hat, and Grillo told himself that none of this mattered. Resources were resources. Sentiment was not a defense system. He was reviewing docking bay access points on his handheld device when Nora appeared again. She climbed onto the bench next to him without asking permission and sat with her legs swinging because they were too short to reach the floor. "Hi," she said. "Go away." "What is that?" She pointed at his device. "Station maps. I am a trader. I need to know where things are. I know where everything is. I can show you. The best spot is observation deck 4 because you can see the gas giant and its rings, and sometimes there are lightning storms in the clouds that are bigger than whole countries on Earth." Grillo looked at her. She was so small. On his homeworld, Children were put to work the moment they could hold a tool. They did not sit with strangers and talk about lightning storms. "Why are you not afraid of me?" he asked. Nora tilted her head. "Why would I be afraid of you? I am an alien. You do not know me." "So?" "Rennie is an alien, and he is the nicest person on the station. My dad says most people are good if you give them a chance." She pulled a piece of candy from her pocket, something wrapped in clear plastic, curved like a hook, striped red and white. "Do you want a candy cane? I have extra." "No." "Okay. I will save it for you in case you change your mind." She put it back in her pocket, jumped off the bench, and ran toward a group of children who were making paper decorations on the floor nearby. Grillo watched her go. Then he looked back at his device and the map of the storage base. His cargo drone was ready. His route was planned. Tomorrow night, while these humans sat around their ridiculous tree and sang their ridiculous songs and gave each other ridiculous gifts, he would take everything they had prepared. He closed the device and finished the terrible coffee. The plan was solid. The humans were soft. This was going to be easy. He refused to think about why the word easy was starting to feel heavy in his mouth. Christmas Eve arrived on Haven Station the way a storm arrives on an ocean world. Slowly at first, then all at once. By midday, the humans had finished their preparations. The great tree in the main atrium stood tall and heavy with ornaments, its branches wrapped in golden light. Garlands of green and red hung from every railing. The food hall had been transformed into a feast room with long tables covered in white cloth and plates stacked high with things Grillo could not name. Roasted meats, golden breads, bowls of mashed roots, pies with lattice tops leaking sweet filling. The entire station smelled like cinnamon and pine, two scents that Grillo had learned to identify over the past 2 days and had grown to quietly hate because they made him feel something he could not explain. At 1900 hours station time, the celebration began. Every human on Haven Station moved toward the main hall. They came in families and groups and alone. They came in sweaters with ugly patterns and hats with bells on them. They brought dishes of food and bottles of drink and armfuls of gifts wrapped in bright paper. The aliens on the station came too, Rennie in his full Santa suit now, a pair of Telek merchants wearing tinsel around their necks, even a Drovari miner who looked confused but was eating a cookie and seemed content. Grillo watched from the shadows of a maintenance corridor on Deck 5. He could hear them below. The singing had started, something about a silent night and a holy night. 3,000 voices together, not perfect, not practiced, just together. The sound carried through the station's metal bones and reached him where he stood alone in the dark. He shook his head and activated the cargo drone. The storage bays on Deck 7 were empty of people. Everyone was at the celebration. Grillo moved quickly, punching in the access codes his contact had sold him. The first door opened with a soft click. Inside, the bay was stacked floor to ceiling with crates. He worked in silence. The cargo drone was a flat, hovering platform he had modified to run without engine noise. He loaded it with the first round, 12 crates of preserved food and 4 containers of fresh ingredients meant for the Christmas Day breakfast. The drone glided down the maintenance shaft toward the Dust Runner's open cargo hold. Grillo loaded the second round, then the third. Bay 1 was empty in 40 minutes. Bay 2 took 30 because the gifts were lighter than the food. He stacked them carefully in a hold, all those boxes wrapped in paper with bows and ribbons, each one labeled with a name. He saw names he did not recognize and names he did. One box was labeled, "For Rennie," something to keep your ears warm. Another said, "Nora," from Dad. He put that one on the pile with the others and did not look at it again. Bay 3 held the decorations, spare lights, extra ornaments, rolls of ribbon, boxes of candles. Useless things, but they would sell. Everything sold if you found the right buyer. Bay 4 was smaller. It held special items, handmade things the colonists had crafted for the community celebration. A set of carved wooden figures for a display in the atrium. A quilt stitched together from fabric donated by dozens of families, each square showing a different picture. And on a small table near the back, sitting on a velvet cloth, was the tree topper. It was a star, hand-carved from a piece of golden wood that must have come all the way from Earth. Someone had spent hours on it. The edges were smooth, the points perfectly even, and at its center was a small engraving. Grillo leaned close to read it. It said, For haven. For home. He picked it up. It weighed almost nothing. It was worth almost nothing. But his hands felt strange holding it, like the wood was warmer than it should have been. He put on the drone with everything else and turned to leave. Nora was standing in the doorway. She was in pajamas, soft blue ones with little white stars printed on them. She held a stuffed animal under one arm, something that looked like a brown four-legged earth creature. Her feet were bare. Her curly hair was messy. She must have slipped away from the celebration. She did not move. She looked at Grillo. Then she looked past him at the empty shelves where hundreds of gifts and crates and decorations had been stacked just an hour ago. Her eyes moved slowly across the bare metal racks, taking it all in. Then they came back to Grillo. She did not scream. She did not cry. She did not run. She just stood there, small and barefoot in the doorway of the empty room, and looked at him with those wide brown eyes. The silence between them was enormous. It filled the storage bay like water filling a sinking ship. Grillo could hear the distant sound of singing from the main hall, something about joy to the world, and it mixed with the silence in a way that made his chest tight. He opened his mouth to say something. Nothing came out. Nora hugged her stuffed animal a little closer and waited. Grillo had faced pirates in the dead zones between star systems. He had been held at gunpoint by a Drovari smuggler twice his size. He had once talked his way out of Finn debt cell, where 3 of his own kind wanted to sell his organs for parts. None of that had prepared him for a 7-year-old human girl in starprint pajamas asking him a simple question. "Why did you take everything?" Nora asked. She had not moved from the doorway. She was not blocking his path on purpose. She was too small to block anything. She was just standing there, holding her stuffed animal, looking at him the way someone looks at a puzzle they want to solve. Grillo's training told him to push past her. Leave. Get to the ship. Go. But his legs were not cooperating. "It is business," he said. His voice sounded strange in the empty bay. "I'm a trader. I trade in goods. Your people left these goods unprotected. That is not my fault." Nora tilted her head to one side. "Those are not goods. Those are presents. Mrs. Adler made cookies for everyone on the station. She has been baking for 3 weeks. And the quilt in Bay 4, my friend Lena's mom, stitched our square. It has a picture of a dog on it, because Lena loves dogs even though we cannot have one on the station. These details do not matter to me. And the star," Nora continued as if he had not spoken. "Mr. Haddad carved that star. He is really old and his hands shake, but he worked on it every day for 2 months. He said it was for all of us." Grillo felt the weight of the star in his memory, the warmth of the wood, the engraving that said, "For haven. For home." He pushed the thought away. "I am sorry," he said, and he was surprised to find that he almost meant it. "But this is how the galaxy works. Resources go to those who take them. Your people should have guarded their things." "But it is Christmas," Nora said. "That means nothing to me. It means everything to us." The words were simple, a child's words, but they landed in Grillo's chest like stones dropped into still water, and the ripples spread outward into places he did not know he had. He tried again. "You do not understand. In my culture, everything has a price. Everything is a transaction. You give something, you get something. That is the only way the universe makes sense." Nora sat down on the floor. She crossed her legs and put her stuffed animal in her lap and looked up at him. "That is sad," she said. "It is not sad. It is practical. It is sad," she repeated, "because you do not know what Christmas is about, and I think that is why you're doing this. I know exactly what Christmas is about. Your people waste resources on—" "No." Nora shook her head firmly. "The presents and the food and the tree are not Christmas. Those are just the stuff. Christmas is when everyone decides to be nice to each other at the same time. You could take all the stuff." She waved her small hand at the empty shelves around them. "You already did, but you cannot steal that part. The being nice part. That stays." Grillo opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. He had argued with Finn negotiators, council bureaucrats, and black market dealers across 12 systems. He had never lost an argument to someone whose feet did not touch the ground when she sat on a bench. He was losing this one. "Your people will wake up tomorrow and there will be nothing," he said. "No food, no gifts, no decorations. They will be devastated." Nora thought about this. They will be sad, she agreed. But then they will make more. They will share what they have. Dad will make pancakes because he always makes pancakes and he does not need a crate for that. People will give hugs instead of presents. And next year they will do it all again. She looked at him steadily. We are really good at doing things again. Then she did something that broke every calculation in Grillo's mind. She reached into her pajama pocket and pulled out the candy cane. The same one from 2 days ago, still wrapped in its clear plastic, red and white stripes curved into a hook. She held out to him. I saved this for you, she said. I told you I would. A gift. She was giving him a gift. Right now, after watching him steal everything her station had prepared for their most important celebration. After seeing the empty shelves and knowing what he had done, she was sitting on the cold metal floor in her bare feet and offering him candy. Grillo took it. He did not decide to take it. His hand just moved on its own, and then the candy cane was in his gray fingers, light as air, and Nora was smiling at him with that gap-toothed smile, as if she had just won something important. He stood in the empty storage bay for a long time after she left, turning the candy cane over in his hands, listening to the distant sound of humans singing about peace on Earth. He did not feel peaceful. He felt like something inside him was cracking open, and he did not know what would come out. The cockpit of the Dust Runner was dark except for the green glow of the navigation console. Grillo sat in the pilot's chair with his hands on the armrests and the candy cane on the dashboard in front of him. Behind him, the cargo hold was full. Crates of food, stacks of wrapped presents, rolls of decorations, bundles of lights, the carved wooden star. Everything Haven Station had gathered for Christmas. Enough goods to keep Supervisor Olu satisfied for months. Enough profit to pay off Grillo's debts and buy him a better ship and maybe, finally, get the consortium off his back. All he had to do was start the engines and fly away. He stared at the candy cane. Red and white stripes. A simple curve. Something a child carries in her pocket and offers to a stranger who just robbed her whole world. Not because she was too young to understand what happened. She understood perfectly. She gave it to him anyway. Grillo tried to do the math. He tried to calculate the cost of keeping the cargo versus the cost of returning it. The consortium would punish him for failure. He might lose his trading license. He might lose the Dust Runner. He might lose more than that. The Fen were not gentle with those who wasted their time. But the numbers kept falling apart in his head because other numbers kept replacing them. 9 hours to build a toy bird for a stranger's child. 3 weeks of baking cookies for 3,000 people. 2 months of shaking hands carving a wooden star. A 7-year-old saving a candy cane in her pocket for 2 days just in case the gray alien changed his mind. None of these numbers made economic sense. None of them generated profit. And yet, somehow, they added up to something that every profit calculation Grillo had ever run did not. He thought about what Rennie had said, that after Christmas, the station ran better, that people worked harder, fought less, helped each other more. He had dismissed it as Palak foolishness. But now, sitting alone in his dark cockpit with a cargo hold full of stolen kindness, he wondered if the Palak understood something the Fen never would. The Fen had been hoarding resources for 800 years. They controlled trade routes and supply chains across 3 sectors. They were rich by any measure the galaxy used. And they were miserable. Every Fen Grillo had ever known was afraid of losing what they had, afraid of someone taking what was theirs, afraid of giving anything away because giving meant losing. The humans had almost nothing. A metal station orbiting a gas giant at the edge of nowhere. Limited supplies, limited space, limited time. And once a year, they decided to take what little they had and share it with everyone around them, including aliens wearing stupid hats who were not even the same species. And they were happy, not pretending to be happy, not performing happiness for some economic advantage. Just happy, in a way that Grillo had never been, in a way that no Fen he knew had ever been. He picked up the candy cane and turned it over in his fingers. It weighed nothing. It was worth nothing. A child had given it to him as if it were the most natural thing in the world. And maybe it was if you were human. Maybe giving things away was not a deficiency. Maybe it was the point. Grillo put the candy cane in his pocket and stood up. He powered down the Dust Runner's engines. Then he opened the cargo hold and activated the drone. He worked through the night, alone, in silence, carrying every crate back through the maintenance shaft down to Deck 7, into the storage bays. He put the food back in Bay 1, the gifts back in Bay 2, the decorations back in Bay 3. He checked labels and stacked things carefully because someone had organized these with care and he owed them at least that much. He saved Bay 4 for last. He placed the wooden figures back on their shelf. He folded the quilt and laid it where he had found it. And then he took the carved star, the one that said for haven, for home, and placed it back on its velvet cloth, and his hands were shaking in a way that had nothing to do with the cold. He sealed all 4 bays and walked back to the dust runner with an empty cargo hold and an empty plan and a feeling in his chest that he still could not name. Through a viewport in the corridor, he could see the gas giant and its rings, painted in bands of orange and cream. Lightning flickered in the deep clouds, just like Nora had described. It was beautiful. He had been docked here for days and had never once looked at it. He sat in the cockpit and opened a channel to Supervisor Olu. The gray face appeared on screen, expectant. The mission failed, Grillo said. The humans had security systems I was not briefed on. The cargo was inaccessible. Olu's expression shifted from expectation to fury. You had 3 days. You had access codes. You're telling me that a species that gives away its resources for free was too clever for you. Yes, Grillo said. You're finished, Grillo. The consortium does not tolerate. Grillo disconnected the call. He sat in the dark cockpit for a long time, listening to the hum of the station around him, and he realized that the heaviness he had felt for the past 2 days was gone. In its place was something light, something that felt like the opposite of death. In his pocket, the candy cane waited. Christmas morning broke across Haven Station like a warm breath on cold glass. The lights in the corridors shifted to their daytime pattern, soft and golden, and the music that had been playing all week started again. Quiet now, something gentle about snow falling. Grillo heard it from inside the dust runner, where he had been sitting awake all night, staring at the wall and thinking about nothing and everything. He had decided to leave quietly, slip away before the station noticed. He had no cargo, no mission, no standing with the consortium. There was nothing for him here. He would find another job somewhere in the outer sectors where the Finn's reach was weak and start over. It was not a good plan, but it was the only one he had. He packed his few belongings into a bag and walked through the airlock into the station corridor. The hallway was still quiet. Most humans were probably sleeping in after their celebration. He moved quickly toward the docking bay, keeping his head down. Hey, hold on. Grillo stopped. A human male was walking toward him from the opposite direction. Tall, broad-shouldered, with tired eyes and hands that looked like they had spent years lifting heavy things. Grillo recognized him. Dahl, the cargo dock supervisor, the man who built toy birds. Nora's father. Grillo's body tensed. He calculated the distance to the airlock. 4 seconds at a run. But Dahl was not running. He was walking calmly, holding 2 mugs, and his expression was not angry. It was the expression of a man who had been awake too early and had made too much coffee. You're Grillo, right? Dahl said. The traitor. I was just leaving. Okay, but Nora told me I should find you. She said you should come to breakfast. He held out one of the mugs. The whole station eats together on Christmas morning. There is a seat if you want it. Grillo stared at the mug. Steam rose from it. Your daughter told you to find me. She did. She has been talking about you for 2 days. The gray alien who looks sad and needs to learn about Christmas. Her words. Dahl shrugged. I have learned not to argue with her. She is usually right about people. She does not know anything about me. She knows enough. Dahl was still holding out the mug. Look, the food is free. The coffee is strong. And if you say no, I'm going to have to go back and tell a 7-year-old that her friend would not come to breakfast. And honestly, that is harder than anything I deal with on the cargo docks. Grillo took the mug. He did not decide to take it. Just like the candy cane, his hands moved before his brain could object. Dahl nodded and turned. This way. It is already loud in there. Fair warning. The mess hall was chaos. 3,000 humans and a few dozen aliens packed into a space meant for half that number, and every single one of them was talking, laughing, or eating. Long tables were loaded with food. pancakes stacked in tall piles, bowls of fruit, plates of eggs, baskets of bread still warm from the ovens. Children ran between the tables, shrieking with excitement, clutching new toys and wearing paper crowns they had pulled from bright crackers. Rennie was in the middle of it all, still in his Santa suit, holding a plate so large it looked normal in his massive hands. A group of children hung from his arms like ornaments from a tree. He was laughing, a deep rumbling sound that shook the table. Someone put a plate of food in front of Grillo before he sat down. Someone else poured him juice. A woman he had never met wished him a Merry Christmas and moved on without waiting for a response. It was all happening too fast, like being caught in a river, and the current was warm. Then Nora appeared. She came running through the crowd at full speed, her curly hair bouncing, her gap-toothed grin so wide it took up half her face. She grabbed his arm and pulled him to a seat next to hers. "You came," she said. "I told Dad you would come. I told him." "Your father is very persuasive," Grillo said. "No, he is not. I am." She climbed onto her chair and reached under the table, pulling out a piece of paper that had been folded twice. She unfolded it and held it up for him to see. It was a drawing, done in colored wax sticks that the humans called crayons. It showed a gray figure with 3 eyes standing next to a small brown-haired figure with a gap at her teeth. The gray figure was wearing a red hat. Above the 2 figures, in wobbly letters too large for the page, Nora had written, "My friend Grillo." It was the worst piece of art Grillo had ever seen. The proportions were wrong. The colors were uneven. One of his 3 eyes was significantly larger than the other 2. The red hat looked like a melted triangle. It was the first gift anyone had ever given him. "That is you," Nora said, pointing at the gray figure. "And that is me. And you're wearing a Santa hat, because I think you would look nice in one." Grillo took the drawing. He held it carefully, the way he had held the wooden star, but this was lighter. This weighed almost nothing at all, and yet it was heavier than anything in his empty cargo hold. "Thank you," he said. The words felt unfamiliar in his mouth, like speaking a new language. He was not sure he had ever said them before. Not once. Not in his entire life. Nora beamed. "You are welcome. Now eat your pancakes before they get cold. Dad makes the best pancakes." Grillo ate. The pancakes were good. The coffee was strong. The noise was enormous and constant and completely overwhelming. A child at the next table was showing her new toy bird to anyone who would look. Rennie had started singing in a voice that rattled the light fixtures. Doll sat across from Grillo and ate quietly and did not ask questions, which was the greatest kindness of all. And Grillo sat there in the middle of all of it, holding a child's drawing and a candy cane, surrounded by a species that made no economic sense. And for the first time in his life, he was not calculating the cost of anything. He was just there, and it was enough. Months later, a brief entry appeared in the Galactic Anthropology database, filed by an anonymous source from the Fin trade networks. It read, "Advisory to all Fin operations. Do not attempt to exploit human ceremonial gatherings. They possess a defensive mechanism that we have no counter for. They call it joy. It is, as far as we can determine, contagious. Proceed with extreme caution." The entry was flagged, reviewed, and archived. No one at the consortium took it seriously. But deep in the outer sectors, aboard a small ship called the Dust Runner, a gray-skinned alien with 3 eyes had taped a child's drawing to his cockpit wall. And every time he looked at it, he smiled. He was still learning how, but he was getting better at it.